JDR Radio News. JDR News Live.
The human brain is made for thinking, not pubic experience. It's hardly a tinker toy for experimenting. Not pubic with drugs.
Why do we talk about marijuana? It's the single biggest drug that is a source of some confusion.
This is really about educating the public about the fact that marijuana is a less harmful drug.
Marijuana, that's to get high.
You can be as high as you want.
The prohibition of marijuana over the last 71 years has not actually prevented you from using marijuana.
You feel close
Sure to winning the war.
I do believe there have been some successes.
we will never arrest our way out of this problem.
Welcome to the John Doe Radio Show, JDR News Live Daily. It's Tuesday. Thank you very much for hanging out with us. Tuesday, the 10th of November. Hope you're having a fantastic day. It's a big news day when it comes down to cannabis. Tons of stories to choose from. We'll get to those in just a second. Big thanks to the sponsors that make the John Doe Radio Show possible. Couldn't absolutely not do it without them. Let me pull this up here. Touchscreen laptop over here on the right. Sometimes you got to drag and drop some things, and I like to just poke. Anyway, understanding the rapidly expanding cannabis regulation throughout the United States is something that you should hand over to the specialists and the professionals. It's crucial to cannabis business longevity to make sure that you do it right. From consulting and commercial construction to product and brand licensing, USA Cannabis Company, USACannabisconsulting.com is your one-stop shop for getting those things taken care of that you need to be a business. One common theme with everybody in the cannabis industry, they're trying to make some money. USA Cannabis Company is a licensed general contractor, specializes in most marijuana-approved states across the country. USA Cannabis Company has a portfolio that you can check out. Also, if you go to USACannabisconsulting.com and you tell Kyle Allen and the crew over there that the John Doe Radio Show sent you, they'll take care of you, hook you up. Make sure that you're treated right. It's all right. It's all right. Big thanks to them. USACannabisconsulting.com. Also, big thanks to weedbiz.net. We wouldn't be able to bring you the John Doe Radio Show not listening live. So if you download our show, big thanks to WeedBiz. They're the ones that bring that to you. Weedbiz.net. If you need a grow pod, you need something that's not just janky put together with duct tape or super glue or Elmer's glue or however jank was put together, make sure you head over to weedbiz.net. Click on their grow pod section, and then also they have cannabis news from the South over there on that dang old website. So if you feel like you dropped the dang old thing down underneath the dang old thing and you want to go to get the dang old thing, then you can go to that website and then learn the dang old what's going on in the South. You hear what I'm saying? I'm sure you understood that. And big thanks to yourgraphics.com. URGRAFIX.com, baby. Again, you're listening to the John Doe Radio Show, JDR News Live Daily. Thank you very much hanging out with us. Monday through Friday, 6 o'clock Mountain Time. You can jam us on youtube.com/John Doe Radio. Join us in chat if you do get the chance. If you've got any questions, any comments, whatever it is, just go to our chat. youtube.com/John Doe Radio. Ask the questions in there, and we will take care of you. And if you could, pass this along to your friends. The Puff Puff Pass. Super serious on that. A lot of things are grown by grassroots in this industry, and there's a lot of things that wouldn't even exist or be as big as they are in this industry if it weren't for grassroots movement. Other industries, you know, you got these big-ass companies putting $1 million trillion into whatever product it is. And then we sit here, the cannabis industry, and the culture that we have is just so dedicated. It's its own massive rock of a pillar. You are. Yes, you. A pillar. News today on JDR News Live. Big news from Mexico, a couple stories. Mexican president rules out marijuana legalization on the same day that a Mexican senator introduced a medical marijuana measure. Get to those stories. Also on tap, here in Colorado, there was a burned body found in a car in Jefferson County, which is just right outside of Denver. And it came out yesterday that the burned body was tied to a cannabis growing operation. Interesting thing about this is I have a few friends that don't really have anything to do with cannabis. Zip, zilch, nada. Family people. Well, I say family people like it means the cannabis people can't be family people, but these are, those type of quote-unquote family people. And, cannabis. I don't know if I want anything to do with that. Anyway, that's neither here nor there because I don't really have any feedback from them other than they just know it. But blood drops being found on marijuana plants, dude shot in the chest 5 times, a burnt car found 100 miles away. All I got to say about this is I'm glad that something like this does not happen every day here in Colorado. Otherwise, we would be in some serious trouble. Surprising that it really wasn't bigger news here in the past couple of days. And really just passed off on the Denver Post. I haven't seen it on one other news station reporting that this was a cannabis-related death. Anyway, we'll get to that. Also have a news story about crocodiles and alligators being the guards at a brand new prison in Indonesia. I don't know what it is. I don't think it's that people in other countries are crazy so much as they're just different than the way we think maybe here in the United States. But it would be one of the last things, or maybe not one of the last things. Maybe I'm giving the justice system and people that have to do with have anything to do with prisons too much credit when I say this, but it's not surprising that this statement would come from an Indonesian type of situation to where after you get thrown in jail, you pretty much get put to death when it comes to drugs. In 2013, Indonesia actually up until 2013 for a while, they weren't putting people to death in Indonesia for possession of drugs or you moving drugs from one place to another. I think that's called drug muling. Importing, exporting. Anyway, in 2013, they called that all off. And then they started killing people again in Indonesia. Now this dude, who basically runs the anti-drug agency in Indonesia, has talked about there being a crocodile and alligator prison. We'll get to that in a minute. Also, small parts of Iowa vote to legalize medical and recreational marijuana. Didn't get to that story yesterday, but then it ties into a story that came out late yesterday evening about a South Dakota tribe with big cannabis ambitions, says the headline, torched their crop out of fear that the DEA would come in and lay the smacketh downeth uponeth them. Real possible fear, really, with anybody. But the frustrating part about cannabis when it comes to the Indian tribes is that there's been a lot of misinformation, a lot of things put across that the feds or the DEA was not going to come in, burn these, or they burned the crop, the tribe did. But there's been indication that the DEA is not going to come in, raid you, that these tribes would be allowed to use cannabis and would be allowed to grow cannabis. The big thing in particular is that we talked about before a tribe that was growing hemp. The DEA came in, cut down all the hemp plants, weighed all the hemp, all the steeds, aka that's JDR talk, JDR dictionary for sticks and seeds, stems and seeds, and weighed them all together and basically put this on the tribe, even though it wasn't cannabis buds. We're just dealing with hemp here. And as you know, if anything tests above 0.3% CBD, THC, CBG, I think at this point in time, even though these things are not necessarily on the books, CBD I think is, but I'm not sure about like CBG, CBN, some of these other cannabinoids that are involved with cannabis. I'm not sure exactly that they're directly on the books as being 100% illegal. Now it gets paired up against and push up against the THC and all-inclusive marijuana plants, I'm sure if it were to come down to anybody trying to prosecute you, that it wouldn't matter to them if it's CBN, CBG, heebie-jeebie, CBGB, the Bee Gees. I'm sure it doesn't matter to them. They're going to charge you with a crime if you're anywhere above that 0.3% testing. This is absolutely ridiculous, and we've talked about it many, many, many times before. The difference between cannabis that you smoke and cannabis that is hemp that you can make many, 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 many things from, including rope. Our founding fathers grew cannabis. George Washington talking about in one of his journals, he got home too late from his trip to be able to separate out the male plants from the female plants. One of the most awesome mentions of cannabis anywhere in the history of the United States. George Washington being that grower. Heck, the original colonies paid their taxes with hemp. They were required to grow hemp. But you don't learn that in school. Not taught in your U.S. history class that you went to, even though it should be. So one thing that's frustrating about the United States is that really what makes a country free, despite everything else that they can do for you, or that they can do to you, is that your mind should be free to learn about anything that you want. You should be taught about anything besides how quote-unquote bad or uncouth it is to be teaching you about it. That's what makes a free society a lot of the times mostly free, is the ability to gain information and to gain learning on your own. I've said it before. Iran, other places in the Middle East. Molly freaking out over there freaked me out. I thought somebody was standing behind me. It just come through the door. Obviously, Molly, the studio dog, just chilling with us. Seems like when she's hanging out here with me, laying on the bed right in front of me, that it's just a more relaxed time here on the JDR. More clear thoughts. She's like my good luck charm, you know, like that rabbit's foot. Instead, I have a Molly dog. Where's she going to Puffy? Where's she Puffy? Come here, Puffy. Okay, never mind. Back to what I was saying. Making yourself free, having free access to information, Mideast, that's a big reason why people so pissed off there. And one of the first things that a tyranny is going to do is cut you off from the internet, cut you off from being able to learn the things that you want to learn or freely communicate with other people. One of the biggest reasons why we have such reform when it comes down to cannabis or the drug war, so much knowledge being learned because of the internet, because of your access to information. Drug war proliferated for such a long time because these people that head up the drug war were the only source of information for so long. You had to listen to them, believe me or not. And it was the type of culture that we lived in here in the United States, that it was respect my authority. You know, your grandparents, possibly even your parents, the last thing in the world that they would ever think of doing is questioning authority. Well, maybe not your parents, or maybe not yours, or yours. Hence why you're sitting here listening to the John Doe Radio Show. You had upbringing that questioned authority. Anyway, so a big important piece of the pie is to make sure that people learn everything that they possibly can. One of the reasons why we bring you JDR News Live here every day, because it's up to you to stay informed. It's up to us to help make it a little bit easier for you to stay informed. Hopefully we can do that for you. Besides me just sitting here like a jackass and talking to you. Rambling on Monday through Friday, 6 John Doe Radio. Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto said Monday he opposes any eventual legalization of marijuana 5 days after the Supreme Court ruled in favor of 4 people who wanted to grow pot for personal use. Peña Nieto said in a speech that for me it would not be desirable. I'm not in favor of any eventual legalization of marijuana, but he said he was willing to listen to other opinions. The president said he is welcome to debate on the question and invited doctors, socialists, and other academics to contribute, but said it should in no way represent an opening for the consumption of more dangerous drugs. The Supreme Court ruled last Wednesday, that growing, possessing, and smoking marijuana for recreation is legal under the right to freedom. Some people say it only applies to the 4 people that this Supreme Court decision was over, but I don't see I don't know how the system works in Mexico, besides if you get busted, you hand the person that's busted you 1,000 pesos and just walk away as quickly and as politely as possible. Really, I don't know beyond that how this system does work over there, but I would guess that this Supreme Court decision would not just represent the will of these 4 people and wanting to using cannabis to express their freedom to put in their body what they feel they can put in their body. Not necessarily what's good for you, but what they feel is right. If you want to drink Drano, maybe you should be able to drink Drano. If you want to drink cannabis oil, maybe you should be able to drink cannabis oil. Anyway, the Mexican Supreme Court saying that it was kosher. And now how this doesn't apply to everybody, I have no clue. I would assume that it does apply to everybody. But they keep saying at this point the ruling covers only the plaintiffs in the single case. Ruling did not approve the sale of commercial production of marijuana, nor does it imply a general legalization. But if the court rules the same way on 5 similar petitions, it would then establish precedent to change the law and allow general recreational use. And I don't see how those other petitions could go the opposite way if this one went as positively as it did. And I remind you again, this is not medical marijuana that we're talking about here. This is actual recreational cannabis. Sitting down, puffing on a spliff because you just feel like puffing on a spliff. I know I read a post from Russ Belville today, and he just keeps going on and on and on. By the way, I dig Russ. We've been into it, in and out of back and forths with each other. But bottom line is, I respect his opinion. And he's got one of the most well thought out opinions and listing facts of anybody out there in the cannabis industry. It's one thing to get out here or get up here on the mic or go on Facebook and just spout off things left and right that you feel. But if you back them up with actual results and percentages, anecdotes, whatever it is, if you've got all that information lined up, I mean, you're doing your due diligence. Someone may be able to argue with you, but they can't tell you that you're necessarily misinformed unless they're giving out bad information. Anyway, talking about how all cannabis use is not medical use. Even if you're using cannabis, my personal opinion, for recreational purposes, that you have real no quote-unquote ailments to you, you're still getting a benefit from that cannabis. Just like, say, I eat edibles. And when I eat edibles, I don't necessarily feel high off of the edibles. I don't know what it is. Until I actually crash out or come off the high the next day. I can feel it in my body. I can understand that there was something going on with that. But when it comes to feeling high or that spot that you're trying to get to when you smoke or you eat edibles, I don't know, maybe it's because my metabolism is so freaking high. And it has, over the years, started to slow. And edibles have become more and more productive and more effective when it comes down to me using them. But the bottom line is, I still know that cannabis, and I still know the ingredients of whatever's in that is affecting me. It may be affecting me positively. It may be affecting me negatively, as far as if you get maybe sick if you've ate too much edibles, either from you ate too much chocolate or whatever it was, too much junk food, or that your body just reacts differently from the ingestion of cannabis. You know, maybe you have a freak out. Maybe you just pass out. Whatever it is, that still doesn't negate how your body and your endocannabinoid system reacts and accepts the cannabis in. You know, one of the big reasons why it stays in your body for so long is because your body's like, hey, I kind of like this shiz. I can use this. Let's just keep a hold of this. And then meth, on the other hand, which every ingredient is a poison and can kill you in itself, Your body's like, fart this couch. I'm out of here. I can't do this. You got to get rid of this shiz. And it doesn't stay in your system for that long at all. From anywhere 3 to 14 days, I think it was. 14 days being the very extended end of you being able to test positive for meth. But then say someone like me, the last time they tried to clean up, 55 days for me to test negative at over 55 days. I still don't even know how long exactly it took. There's a whole story behind that. When I was trying to get sober off alcohol and pills, I was inside a sober house. We'll get to the Mexico news and more here in a second, so just let me ramble here for a second. But as I was getting sober, pills and alcohol, was at a sober house. I came in the sober house. They obviously knew that I had smoked cannabis before. I was honest with them about use. Didn't use anything. Nothing. I mean, taking Excedrin to the extent of anything that I put in my body as far as drugs or anything for a pretty damn good amount of time. I think I stopped smoking cannabis for something like 9 months or so, 10 months at the time. Decided to spark up on 420 when I went to the 420 celebration. I think it was a year, not last year, the year before. Anyway, I kept getting tested at this sober house, and I kept testing positive for cannabis. So these motherfuckers, with their rules, kept getting pissed off and kept coming down to the line of like, okay, you should be clean right now. And it goes to show that, you know, education is a hugely important thing. And even though these people were involved with getting you back on your game, they still didn't understand or look into the facts about drugs. Just because drugs are bad, okay? Can't be doing any of them dang old drugs. And to some people, learning about drugs, being educated about drugs, having a legit conversation about the drug war and the way that things need to be headed, and the problem that we have in the United States with treating people with addiction, mental abuse, or mental issues, the same type of thing. People think that talking about it is putting yourself directly into the whole situation and putting yourself into action that's going to harm you. When in fact, all it is you just trying to be ignorant about something that you think you know everything about. And that's wrong. And that's what kind of where we sit right now when it comes to the DEA and the drug war and anti-drug organizations, DARE. All these people don't want to have legit conversations about cannabis, about other drugs, about toxicity, cannabis versus alcohol, which is worse. Even though alcohol perceived to be the better drug in a lot of places, not necessarily here in Colorado or maybe where you're at. But legislators talking about how we already have alcohol. People already use it. Anyway, you see where I'm getting to. But finally came down to like the 55 days. I was like, all right, I gotta be clear. I gotta be clean. Let's do this. I was super gung-ho to take this drug test because it had been like 2 weeks since I had taken my last one. I'm like, there's no way 55 days that I'm not clean right at this point in time. By the way, super heavy on dabs before I did all this. And from what I've heard for a lot of people, so keep this in mind, this is good information for you, that dabs with some people take a lot longer to exit out of your system than just smoking cannabis flower does. The concentration of the dabs and whatever the fuck it is, the science behind it, your body just keeps that in longer. Tested positive, kicked out of the sober house that night during a snowstorm, and then had to go stay. Luckily, at this point in time, I'd thrown up the white flag and said, I need to do everything I can to get sober. My family had come back into the picture. It was like, had realized if we don't do something, if we don't make one last ditch effort, this dude's gonna die. So my mom, my stepdad, my grandpa, family came in and was like, you know, we'll help you. And I had done absolutely fantastic in this sober house situation. And it took so much to sit down with my mom and explain to her that I had not been doing any drugs. I hadn't even been smoking pot, which at that point in time was kind of an issue, you know, of don't do anything. Gotta stay sober from everything, which I'm glad that I did. It taught me a lot. And I learned a lot about my cannabis use and where it helps me and where I can use it as a quote-unquote crutch to be able to get through, whether it's fending off migraines, fending off depression, or just feeling decent for the moment. I never used to think that cannabis affected my depression that much when it was used. It wasn't something that I was like, oh man, I feel so much more better when I get high, because I'm such an angry person and assumed that I knew everything for so long. I still kind of do, but less than normally. But now this second time around, since I've started smoking and cannabis being the only thing that I've really used for a long time, I've noticed that once it's used to be on antidepressants, used to be on anxiety medication, abused the hell out of anxiety medication. This time around, just solely using cannabis, go and smoke it. Maybe you're feeling super down. Bam! I come out of that room, come out of the garage, come out from outside, wherever you're going to have your sesh, and it feels great. It just goes to show you that with each individual person, the makeup of your body and the makeup of your chemistry is everything with how you feel about cannabis after its use. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. Stayed at this Motel 6 and then proved to my mom through multiple drug tests later that I had gotten sober. Was no longer testing positive for cannabis. And then for some reason, there was like this fluke drug test. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. Let's get on to back to the news. That is a conversation more for JDR News, the long show with Michael Hawley when he comes back with us. Back to the Mexican story. An October opinion survey by the Parametria polling firm in Mexico said that 77% of Mexicans opposed legalizing marijuana, while 20% supported the idea. The poll had a margin of error of 4 percentage points. And from the polls that I've looked at for the past few days, and they've talked quite a bit about, I think this next story might include it. No, it's not going to. But even as low as like 10% of people in Mexico on these polls going to show that they support the legalization of cannabis. And to me, I attribute those numbers to people in Mexico being so scared of drugs, literally scared for their life after hundreds of thousands of people have been killed in Mexico through this drug war, killed by these cartels, killed for speaking out either against or for legalization, whatever it is. That surprised me. It really did, right off the bat. But once I started thinking about it, it made more and more sense, the numbers. It blew me away. I thought when I was first looking at them, when I'm seeing this 10, 16%, 20% supporting cannabis, 70, 80% against legalization, I'm like, what the? Those are the biggest we don't support legalization numbers by far on this fucking continent. I mean, it's stunning. It really is. When you look at Canada, how many people support legalization there? Prime Minister Justin Trudeau probably getting elected because so many people believe in cannabis. Also because they're sick and tired of the Conservative Party that was in play and how much it was a fight to not have the Conservative Party drop everything to the bottom of the ocean like an anchor in Canada. Probably has a lot to do with it, but then cannabis is also another part of it. But Mexico's still moving forward with these conversations, and in our next story, talking about medical marijuana legalization. So legislation, the justice system, and courts pushing reform forward in Mexico. When it comes down to it, when you look at the numbers, it's not the people. And maybe you can contribute some of those numbers to people not supporting legalization because they're afraid. Freaking afraid for their life that if they support it, if they say anything positive for cannabis, anything positive for reforming the drug war, that there's going to be a hitman on their front step the very next day or that evening or 5 minutes from now, and they end up with a hole in their head buried in some sort of mine hidden in the Mexican desert. Sounds like that would be something from a crazy made-up superhero, action film, whatever. But it's not. It's real life for the people in Mexico. Real life for these Mexicans. So it's fantastic to see. It really is that the judicial system moving forward with things, and then legislators moving forward with change. Finishing out this article, the United States. We've already talked about it. Every news article that we read about cannabis talks about Washington, Colorado, Alaska, Oregon, and the District of Columbia legalizing marijuana use. Really the only ones with a decent system right now, Colorado and Oregon. And then when it comes to Washington, D.C., what's happening there is the mayor of Washington, D.C., this, ooh, she's a lady. Yeah, she's a lady. I try not to sing anymore. Singing and rapping, probably something I shouldn't do on the JDR. Last week, I think it was Thursday or whatever, man, I laid down the most fire of flows. If you missed it, you missed it. Probably happen again, and you probably complain again about it. Anyway, Washington, D.C. mayor talking about that she doesn't care if it takes congressional approval, that she's going to implement the legalization, implement stores and shops and dispensing of cannabis regardless if Congress approves what's happened in D.C. Which, if you don't know, both legalization and medical marijuana passing in Washington, D.C. by the highest percentage throughout the United States. I think it was like 69% or something for medical marijuana that they legalized. Anyway, it took 10 years for medical marijuana to be implemented in Washington, D.C. because it took 10 years for Congress to okay it. Any law passed in Washington, D.C. has to be passed through a congressional or Senate appropriations bill. Either way, it's an appropriations bill tagged on to a bunch of other shit. And that's how things work in Washington, D.C. So this mayor's saying that she's not going to wait for that shit. That was said about a year ago. Still waiting for the implementation of things in Washington, D.C. Still in Mexico, though, a senator from President Enrique Peña Nieto's governing party introduced a bill Tuesday that would allow patients easier access to cannabis-based medicines. That's a week after a ruling by Mexico's Supreme Court cracked the door open for recreational use. The measure does not propose wholesale legalization of medical marijuana, but rather seeks to permit the importation of cannabis and derivatives for medical purposes. Domestic pot production would still be prohibited. This probably stemming off a case, which they'll talk about later here, that they're an 8-year-old girl being the face of medical marijuana when it comes to Mexico's reform. This 8-year-old girl allowed legally to import cannabis from the United States, import hemp oil, cannabis oil for her to use for her treatments. This measure is responding to the urgent need to allow availability of medicines through importation, said Senator Christian Diaz Salazar. I said that like it was a question. Senator Christian Diaz Salazar? Addressing about a dozen families of ill children during a news conference in the Senate building, Diaz Salazar said, "We know that this constitutes a hope for you all to be able to mitigate the pain and suffering of your loved ones. The bill would have to be approved by houses of Mexico's Congress, and the PRI and allied lawmakers control both chambers." This possibly has a good connotation for it to move forward and for it to be approved. According to an outline provided by the senator's staff, the legislation would modify Mexico's health code to remove THC, the active ingredients in marijuana, and synthetic cannabinoids from a list of Schedule I controlled substances and reclassify them as Schedule III. It would also allow the importation of medical marijuana products and establish a 10% duty. They said duty. I take it that is a tax. By doing so, the bill could codify in law a recent court ruling that granted the parents of Graciela Elizadel, I don't know how to say it. One of the funnest things about listening to the John Doe radio show is watching me and listening to me fumble over names. It's fantastic. What we really should do is put together a compilation of me stumbling over these fantastic names. The awesome thing is a lot of these studies have come from overseas when it comes to cannabis. And I thought Spanish, Mexican names were bad. You get somebody from like Czechoslovakia, Russia, Norway, or something like that. I don't know, as white as white can be, and I don't understand those names. It's because Mexico's closer. So I understand the Mexicans a little bit better. I have no clue what I'm talking about. This little girl's family was on hand for Tuesday's introduction of the bill, as were other parents who hope its passage will give them the same rights. Since Graciela began the marijuana extract treatments, her condition improved to the point where she began sleeping through the night for the first time in months. Among the parents at the news conference was Manuel Villanueva. I did pretty good with that one. Who cradled his mostly motionless 11-year-old son, Leo, in his arms as he explained that the boy has a difficult-to-treat form of epilepsy known as Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. Leo suffers from severe mental retardation, spasms, and muscular difficulties that hamper his ability to walk or even speak, and recent operations did not bring relief. We've tried all the anti-epileptics. Unfortunately, the surgery didn't work, he said. His father said. So through our friends and the internet, we found out about the cannabis oil, and now we intend to try it and see what results we get. Salazar's bill is separate from last week's Supreme Court decision favoring growing, possession, and smoking of marijuana for recreational purposes under the right to personal freedom. The ruling covers just a single group of 4 people seeking, we already talked about that, blah, 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 blah. Salazar says this bill is a first step and should not be linked to the debate over recreational use. And as we said before, President Nieto saying that he's open to conversation about it, but then playing the political side of things and saying, let this not be an indication that I am at all for legalization. In fact, I'm the exact opposite. I just think you all should be able to talk. Talk amongst yourselves. Man. What's crazy is that through the drug war and throughout Prohibition's history, the last 80 plus years, things like this have come up. Not necessarily along the lines of medical marijuana, but rights issues have come up time and time again. The thing is, we didn't have... What's the word I'm looking for? I'm thinking of motivation, but that's not the word I'm looking for. You know, when something's moving and it gathers up steam. That's what I'm talking about. If that weren't here right now, we might be facing, if you didn't support cannabis, if you didn't talk out about cannabis being positive, if the internet wasn't so positive with cannabis, we would still be stuck in this situation to where stories like this would just get buried. It would become political suicide for any of these people to be a part of these stories. And then we turn around to look for what happened with these stories, to look what progress they've made, and like, okay, I trust my senators, I trust my legislators. Let's see what they've done with this. And then it's nowhere to be found, and then the dude that you thought was going to be positive for reform is now against it. Because that's how the politics work. But fortunately, we've gained so much steam, momentum, bam! That's the word I was looking for. We've gained so much momentum in this that it's almost impossible for some of these legislators to stop it, wherever you're at in the world. And that is fantastic, because I cannot tell you throughout history how many times people have been so frustrated and have been this close. Your parents, multiple times, hippies, thought that maybe we'll flip this switch. There was a time when Jimmy Carter was in office, and he was about ready to move cannabis reform forward, and it was so close, and we were about ready to wipe out years and years of this drug war, and then someone from his drug cabinet is caught with cocaine. And because he was caught with cocaine, Jimmy Carter had to play the political side and drop all his push and all the movement that he had towards reforming the drug war. I wonder if I can actually delete this song from the entire mix. Hold on here. Let me pull it down here. Stop it. Right click there. Delete from media library. Yes. Bam. No more piano song. So like I said, we've been here multiple times before. It's just fortunate that you stay informed, and it's fortunate that we still have as much momentum as we do. By the way, if you got any questions, make sure you holler at me in the chat. I don't think there's many people asking too many questions today. I'm having a fantastic show. You've got nothing? Is it that I'm doing so fantastic that there's nothing to say? All right, to this crazy story about this burned body. And like, lucky this does not happen time and time again. Blood drops on a 3-foot-tall marijuana plant inside an agate greenhouse provided a clue that helped close a homicide case in which the victim was found 100 miles away in the trunk of a burned-up car. Agate is this small town here in Colorado, right inside the mountains. The DNA from the blood linked the legal grow operation to the charred remains of Jason Michael Dosa, who was 44 years old. The body was discovered September 20th in the trunk of a Nissan Maxima after firefighters extinguished the car fire in a ditch on South Cougar Road in Jefferson County. By the way, Jefferson County basically has outlawed any type of growing, distribution, shops inside the county. Is Jefferson County bigger than Denver County? For some reason, I can't think right off the top of my head. Anyway, Jefferson County, huge area here in Colorado, and there's also places like I live right now in unincorporated Jefferson County, right up against the foothills, and that makes it even bigger of a mamma jamma. But no pot allowed to be distributed anywhere in Jeffco. Now it appears that Dosa, who has been involved in various marijuana grow operations with 2 men, may have been harvesting pot when he was fatally shot. One of those former pot partners, Sean Edward Geerdes, I don't know how you say his last name, J. How can you be looking at a G and say J? Geerdes, 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 I don't know, whatever, has been charged with first-degree murder and Dosa's death. The name of the third partner was redacted from recently unsealed court records. Along with murder, Geerdes also faces a charge of cultivating 30 or more marijuana plants, according to Elbert County District Court records. Geerdes was originally charged in Jefferson County, but that case was dropped when investigators determined the fatal shooting likely happened near Agate. At 2:45 a.m. on September 20th, Dosa left his home carrying a box and tree trimming loppers. He told relatives that he was going to make between $20,000 and $30,000. He was wearing a gray hoodie, Under Armour sweatshirt. I don't know where the $20,000, $30,000 or they don't really explain that paragraph too much. There's kind of a weird missing thing here. Anyway, a man living near Agate couldn't sleep and went out on his porch to smoke. Suddenly, he heard about 10 gunshots coming from his neighbor's house between 2:30 and 4 a.m. Geerdes' house is across the street. It wasn't a bang, it was a pop. The man was quoted as telling investigators the gunshots were followed by about 15 minutes of silence. Then he saw someone walking with a flashlight in front of Geerdes' house, according to records. An autopsy on September 21st revealed 5 bullets in Dosa's body, 2 in his chest, 1 in his jaw, and 2 in his legs. Which leads me to think that, what happened? The dude shot the guy twice. Maybe he shot him in one leg. And this was some movie shiz here. And then shot him in the other leg. And then shot him in the chest. And then shot him in the face. That's a horrible way to go. Jefferson County investigators determined that Dosa's cell phone had pinged off a phone tower in Agate at 9:22 a.m. At 11:24 a.m., the cell phone pinged off a tower a mile away from the location where his body was found. So whoever killed him kept his cell phone on him and traveled with him. Just so you know, in the future, not necessarily if you're going to be performing a murder on someone, but say you're doing some sort of illegal clandestine operation, or you want it to be a situation to where people can't track you, probably shouldn't bring your cell phone. Probably should maybe leave that somewhere where you can't be tracked, because It's the first thing that investigators go and look to whenever there's some situation like this. They track you down, texts, where your cell phone's pinging, who you talk to. According to court records, Doza and Geerdes had entered a partnership in marijuana grow operation at Geerdes' place. Under the agreement, Doza and the third party would build a greenhouse for the marijuana operation in exchange for a share of the marijuana harvest, the court documents show, but the deal broke down. Doja, who filed for bankruptcy in July, lost a substantial amount of money in the deal and was very angry about it, according to an unnamed partner. 2 days before his death, Geerdes showed Doza and other partners 35 mature marijuana plants in the greenhouse. Jason, Doja, was impressed with the size and quality of the marijuana plants, the third party told investigators. When the third party met Geerdes the afternoon of the day Doja's body was found, he asked Geerdes how he had gotten a fat lower lip. Geerdes, this is just fantastic here. You can only make this shit up. Geerdes had replied that he had gone to Denver, gotten ecstasy, and had sex with a girl, and the girl's boyfriend caught him and hit him, said documents. 2 days later, after Doja's murder, Jefferson County investigators searched Geerdes' home and the greenhouse. They found blood drops on a marijuana plant, gravel on the floor, which they say it weird in this sentence, but blood drops on the gravel on the floor and on the east wall. Investigators found two .22 caliber shell casings on the floor as well. Doja was killed with what technicians believe was a .22 caliber bullet. They found a box of high-velocity, hollow-point .22 caliber American Eagle bullets in a crawl space above Geerdes' kitchen. You know, something hit me just extremely hard yesterday, which, not that I ever sit down and think about killing people. I mean, we all have our crazy, wild thoughts about how frustrated we can be, and then we may say something tongue-in-cheek, or when we're pissed off, like, I hate you, or I wish you would die. But really, when it comes down to it, I mean, it's this type of situation just, I don't know, it's understanding how people just cannot be mentally stable or don't have any sense of self-value or a worth for other people when it comes down to it. You know, I went through a 12-step program, and I didn't go through a 12-step program that included a bunch of, like, you gotta pray to God. You know, my God wasn't Jesus, Buddha, Allah, none of that. My God was some sort of higher power that's bigger than me. Whether it be energy, or maybe there is a Jeebus up there, a God up there looking down on us, and when I reach the pearly gates, when I die, and he goes, you should have believed. And I was like, you're damn right I should have. So that comes down to that. You know, I'm willing to admit that I was completely wrong. But for me to get through that 12-step program, because a lot of the times it is super heavy when it comes down to talking about answering to someone or getting your power from something higher than you. Nature, for instance. Something way more powerful than you. And even if you don't believe in some other worldly being that puts you here or controls your life or whatever it is, you got to be able to believe in nature and the science side of things. My opinion, you know, everything's sort of connected by this energy. All living things connected by some sort of energy. That it's the basis of... Anyway, it's getting off on a huge tangent here. But during that time, taking inventory of your own self-worth and taking inventory of other self-worth and where it is that you possibly could understand how they feel about something differently than you. Maybe you got super pissed off about something and you're being selfish about it, and you're not sitting down and thinking about where the other person comes from. Because here's the thing. The way that you experience life is not necessarily the way that another person experiences life, but it's just as intricate and it's just as complicated as what you're going through. That person you pass lives in the same quote-unquote reality as you do when it comes down to it. Now, their understanding of things may be completely different than you. They may be batshit crazy, whatever it is. Still a living being that's next to you. And my understanding from what I've learned and why it's so sad to see people kill another person, beat the shit out of another person, whatever it is because is it really worth crippling your own self-worth, knocking yourself down, submitting to these negative feelings, these situations to where you're losing control over yourself and impeding someone else's life, when it's a situation where all you got to do, drop the mic, turn around, and walk away. You need to get someone out of your life. You need to get a situation out of your life. It's up to you. Period. End of story. That's all there is to it. 100% up to you. Nobody else. Not a single person. Which some people is an extremely hard thing for them to understand. And it was for me for the longest time. Why are other people not reacting the way that I want them to react? God damn it. And then that would piss you off. And it would just roly-poly into this situation to where you feel like you have no control over. By the way, speaking of roly-poly, holy crap. Yesterday, if you haven't seen it online, you can go to my Facebook page, buried under the million posts that I've had for the past 2 days. But either way, this cop yesterday, and we'll get to the news and finish out the news here in a second. This cop yesterday, video was released, I should say. Didn't actually happen yesterday. But this cop is trying to stop a stolen vehicle from getting away. So he pulls in the middle of the street, thinking that there's no way in hell that this person driving this big-ass SUV, this chick driving this big-ass SUV that she stole, was going to slam headfirst going 90 miles an hour coming after this cop. 2, the cop steps out of his car and stands behind his car door seconds before this vehicle barrels down on him and slams headfirst into his vehicle. Officer has his body cam on. Stolen vehicle slams into his cruiser. Cop standing behind the door on the ground. Car door probably slams him. SUV probably slams him. Last second, he fires 2 shots into the SUV. Like, that's going to stop you from dying at this point in time. Really, basically, you're just firing shit randomly. He didn't hit anything. Fired a shot into the top of the windshield and into the hood. But the thing is, this dude's wearing, which all cops need to be wearing video cameras, period, end of story. I don't understand why every single cop in the United States does not have a running camera on them. It should be, period. Not only for our safety, but for the cops' safety. For instance, a couple days ago, they were talking about another stolen vehicle, something else here in Denver that happened, and the cop got shot in the chest. There's no dash cam footage of this. There's no body cam footage of this. Nobody knows what the person looks like. They didn't even have a good description of the vehicle. So why the hell are the police not have a situation to where they have recorded video of fucking everything they do? They're scared. That's the whole reason. Thank God they're getting the shiz suit out of them here lately. That's really what it's going to be, is money's going to force them into a situation. Because legislators and people that are running everything, justice system, is not going to be able to afford this crap anymore. So that's what's going to change rules. Money talks, bullshit walks. Anyway, this cop gets hit, talking about roly-poly, and I have never seen, I seriously have never seen somebody with a video camera roll this many times. At first, I thought that maybe the body cam had come loose off of the officer's body. And as you know, when the camera, someone's skydiving or some shiz like that, and the camera's dropped, it starts to spin a million miles an hour, and you can't really make out what the hell is going on. But this, you can see in a few shots that it's still attached to the motherfucker's body. Still attached to him. And he's... Holy shiz. One of the craziest videos that I've seen here lately, especially when it comes down to cop-involved situations. And then the news story doesn't even say if he's alive or not. I mean, amazing if this dude survived. Amazing. Anyway, it's not like that plays into anything of me not enjoying cops, and I didn't necessarily enjoy watching someone be hit by a car going 90 miles an hour or however fast they were going and then rolling. But just the stupidity and the audacity of this cop that he would think that this person would in no way hit him, and he was a steel brick wall that was just going to stop everything. I don't know, cops make mistakes too. On Monday, Here's another name that we're going to get farked up on. Budi Waseso. However the hell you say his name. Head of Indonesia's anti-drug agency. I could give a shiatsu less about his name other than to say this is a horrible human being. And Indonesia is an absolutely horrible place for allowing these type of situations to go on. And even for this to be brought up and be considered a legitimate thing that they could do. By the way, this news story also from Vice, which, Jesus, every time I see a Vice article, I have to facepalm before I even read it because it's so ridiculously stupid and outrageous lately. How many sections of Vice do they actually have? I saw Vice Munchies, Vice Movies, Vice Video. They have like 50 different websites, and it seems like they have 50 different editors that go and pick some of the stupidest shiz that you can find off the internet. Stuff that's not even have any fact in it whatsoever, which is why I don't read you. This is probably the very first Vice story that I've ever read. And this even one of the stories that's out there that's probably just a bunch of mumbo-jumbo as people talking shit. But such a crappy news organization. I've always thought that about Vice. Mainly for the fact-checking and the ridiculousness that they play into. All right, this dude, head of Indonesia's anti-drug agency, announced he might try to lump the country's death row drug convicts into a special prison guarded by crocodiles. As the BBC reported, also another thing is just Vice takes news articles, which I guess there's not really... Well, there is a difference between what we do here on the John Doe Radio Show, sitting here reading you news stories. It'd be one thing if I just read off these news stories, and that was all. That's all the content that we had here on John Doe Radio. But we read the news stories, we give analysis, get free feedback from you, interpret the news story in our own way. But really what Vice does a lot of the time is just goes in, outlines the story that they're trying to copy, and then puts it in their shit. Of course, Waseo has no intention of just tossing a bunch of killer crocs into Indonesia's existing prisons. Instead, he's mulling construction of a special island specifically designed, they missed the word designed, to house those who have fallen prey to an intense national drug crackdown. First, though, Waseso, whatever the hell his name is, plans to go on a national tour to find the scariest crocs in the land. Crocodile Dundee would be proud. He says, quote, "I will search for the most ferocious type of crocodile," he said. According to a local news site, the reasoning behind the whole crocs as guards thing, which was so far remains a mere proposal, is pretty straightforward according to Wasisio Giorgio Irigato Origato. You can't bribe crocodiles. You can't convince them to let inmates escape. I would beg to differ on bribing crocodiles. You can bribe crocodiles with probably one of your other inmates. And say you don't like your cellmate trying to escape this mamma jamma. Only thing standing between you and freedom is this stack of crocodiles 10 deep. What are you going to do? I don't know. If you're super crazy, try not to be killed by some Indonesian justice system for carrying a couple grams of marijuana. Maybe that would lead you to a situation to where you kill your... God, this is horrible. Where you kill your cellmate, chop him up into a million pieces, and then throw the pieces on either side. God, it's a horrible thought. That's so bad. Part the sea, so to speak, when it comes to the crocodiles. Have them off on their own side. It's like something that would happen in The Walking Dead. Like they've tried to do here recently in The Walking Dead. Spoiler alert. Take this parade of dead walkers and lead them to a certain situation. It seems to me that's bribing the crocodiles. In January, Widodo called narcotics abuse in Indonesia a national emergency. Savage reptiles, it would seem, are just the latest brutal tactic employed by the government. And as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, despite protests against the practice, a 4-year halt to executions was lifted in 2013. Indonesian President Joko Widodo has executed both locals and foreign nationals. Craziness. I don't think, I don't know, going to any country that would kill you for drugs doesn't seem like the best investment to my future. Just really, it doesn't. Doesn't seem like that would serve me very well. And knowing me, I would somehow get caught up in it. Even if I wasn't using drugs, even if I didn't have drugs on me, there would just be something. The clouds would part, sunshine would come down through, and I would be the chosen one to be farted. It's just how it works with me. All right, this story here. Next, leaders of an Omaha tribe in Nebraska are considering Omaha Indian tribe in Nebraska, not a tribe of Wooks in the Omaha area. There's a difference between the two, a huge difference. The Omaha tribe in Nebraska are considering land in western Iowa for growing marijuana. The Sioux City Journal newspaper reports tribal members approved 3 referendums last Tuesday, giving the tribal council the authority to legalize marijuana for medicinal and recreational use to grow plants for industrial hemp. Tribal chairwoman Vernon Miller says a study will examine whether the business would make financial success or sense. Same thing. Miller says leaders will watch the performance of the Flandreau Santee Sioux marijuana resort on its South Dakota reservation. Miller says it's unclear whether the Omaha Tribe's casino, Blackbird Bend, could become a similar resort. Talking about, they didn't really give you a backstory on it, but South Dakota reservation was basically being converted to a recreational cannabis destination. She says the tribe will ensure its efforts wouldn't violate federal or state law. The Omaha Indian Reservation lies primarily in Thurston and Cumming counties in Nebraska, but extends into Burke County, Nebraska, and across the Missouri River into Monona, County, Iowa. It had a population of more than 5,194 in the 2000 census. So our good friend Grambo, the Zamboni operator, hails from Iowa. Thought I'd bring that story special up for him. And on the other hand, a South Dakota American Indian tribe that sought to open the nation's first marijuana resort, we were just talking about, burned its crop after federal officials signal a potential raid. The tribe president said Monday. God, I gotta get a more comfortable seat. My tailbone is killing me right now. I got a pain in the ass. Flandreau Santee Sioux president Anthony Reeder told the Associated Press the tribe had 3 weeks of discussion with authorities that culminated with a meeting in Washington that included a Justice Department official and a U.S. Attorney for South Dakota, Randolph Seiler. Reeder said the tribe wasn't told the raid was imminent, only that one possibility. Nice writing there. If the government's concerns weren't addressed. He said the main holdup is whether the tribe can sell marijuana to non-Indians, along with the origin of seeds used for the crop. A Justice Department spokesman declined to comment on specific discussions that may have taken place with tribes. U.S. attorneys have been directed to assess the threats and circumstances in their districts and consult closely with tribal partners and the Justice Department. A spokeswoman had no comment. Tribe had planned to open a lounge selling marijuana on New Year's Eve. It was the first tribe in South Dakota to legalize the drug following U.S. Department of Justice decision last year to allow tribes to do so on tribal land. The tribe made the decision Friday to destroy its marijuana and burned it on Saturday. He said tribal officials wanted to avoid a raid that might have damaged equipment or the facility, but also wanted to demonstrate good faith as it continues conversation with officials in hopes of resuming the project. One of those frustrating things with there possibly being rogue agents out there that no matter what the feds say, if they don't actually hand down a specific mandate to stay the fuck away from these situations, to not go after these people, that they just take it on their own to go and continue this ridiculous failed war on drugs and do what they've been brainwashed to do for years and years and years. It's just so frustrating, it's ridiculous, and it's unfair. It's just not right. It's not right, goddammit. We felt it would be best to go in with a clean slate, said the tribe, to look for answers on how we to proceed so that all sides are comfortable. The tribe said more talks are scheduled for this week with State Attorney General Marty Jackley. Jackley said over the weekend that the decision to destroy the crop was in the best interest of both tribal and non-tribal members. The legalization of marijuana on the Santee Sioux land came in June, months after the Justice Department outlined a new policy that allows Indian tribes to grow and sell marijuana under the same conditions as some states. That water is good. Many tribes have been hesitant to jump on the pot business, and not everyone in Flandreau, about 45 miles north of Sioux Falls, supports the project. The tribe has said the project could generate up to $2 million a month in profit. Oh, God, get rid of this song, too. The tribe said the project could generate more than $2 million a month in profit, but some state officials have questioned the plan, including Jackley, who has said any changes in tribal laws wouldn't affect non-tribal land or anyone who wasn't a tribal member. Tim Purdon, a Minneapolis attorney who served as the U.S. Attorney for North Dakota from 2010 to 2015, said federal officials can raid marijuana operations at any time because cannabis remains illegal under federal law. The new Justice Department policy doesn't change that, he said. The whole memorandum is department policy. It does not legalize recreational cannabis. It really sets forth the enforcement priorities that will be looked at. So basically, these asshats saying, even though the feds have said, it's up to you to make decisions, it's really not up to you to make decisions. That there's no... Damn it, what's the word I'm looking for? Why can I not think of these freaking 10-point words that normal people use every day? There's no binding agreement when it comes to the feds coming down on top of these tribes or coming down on anyone, really. Even though the opposite has been said many times. Cannabis enforcement being the lowest priority on a lot of police officers' lists. We read a news story last week about police officers across the nation, law enforcement departments talking about how it's their lowest priority possible. Well, then why is it that so many low-hanging fruit, quote-unquote, are being grabbed? Why is it that it's still such massive numbers when it comes to marijuana? Why do you say one thing and then turn around and do another? That shit is what pisses me off. One hand saying one thing, the other hand doing another. It's just not fair. It's really just not fair. He said no operator should expect a stamp of approval from the federal government, even though they technically were given it. The Department of Justice is never going to give a tribe or a merchant, as the going out there on a limb, is never going to give a tribe or a merchant in the state where it's legalized a letter saying you have permission to do this, he said. Cannabis remains illegal under federal law, and looking for some sort of advisory opinion from the department saying that's what you're doing is okay is never gonna happen. It's never gonna happen. Do you understand me? I will not let this happen. If I have anything to do with this, you're gonna go to prison for the rest of your life. God damn it, putting my foot down. That voice just cuts through you. So annoying. But that's how annoying these statements are. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous for this person to say, for them, this is stupid fucking office that running on its own, doing its own thing, saying the Department of Justice is never going to give a tribe or a merchant in a state where it's legalized a letter saying you have permission to do that. Well, we didn't necessarily have permission to come over and just fark Native Americans over like we did, to basically shat on them. We didn't get permission. Why the fuck do they need permission? If we've given them land to use how they see fit, to do what they do, why the hell are we interrupting anything that they're doing? Should not be something that we here in the United States have our best interests into enforcing. It's ridiculous. I feel really strongly about Native American rights. I think that is something that is extremely overlooked. I think the Native American culture It's not taught like it should be in the United States, however you feel about things. When you learn in school about Native Americans, a lot of what you learn is us fighting them and us overtaking them and us creating America. It's not the actual history of Native Americans. We're sitting on a continent. We're sitting on a spot where all these people were well before us, and I'm not talking about they were here first. It's just the fact that our culture, we're sitting right next to them. We built our houses on their land. We built our whole society, our whole culture, and despite how you feel about how we overtook them, that one army bigger than the other army, fair is fair, and love and war, whatever it is you believe about that, the bottom line is, it's still a culture that we should be learning about. It's still something that we should be respecting. Anyway, that's neither here nor there, I guess. I wish I had a bong toke. I'm actually out of cannabis right now. It's just crazy. Crazy fucking situation. I think I have a little bit of reclaim down in the rig, but nothing else. Which makes me so sad. I don't know what I'm going to do. Shout out to everybody that's hanging out on the John Doe Radio Show with us Monday through Friday. If you get a chance and you don't, if you get a chance to go visit our website, johndorad.io. If you haven't gotten a chance to visit us live and listen to the show, everything that's recorded for JDR is up on our site, johndorad.io. Please sponsor us, that too. But please support our sponsors. You need a consultant, head to usacannabisconsulting.com. You need a website to be built. You need advertising, images, whatever it is. Make sure you head to yourgraphics.com, urgrafix.com. And then also weedbiz.net if you need to get some news or if you need a grow pod that's not jank. That's my statement on things. That's not their statement. That's just my way of taking it. If you need a grow pod that's not jank, you should head to weedbiz.net and click on their grow pod section, and you'll get taken care of. It's not something exactly cheap either, because it's not put together cheaply. Besides, it's pot. It's money that grows on trees. Spend as much money as you can, and then grow it again. It's a fantastic idea. Great. All right, that's going to do it probably for today on the John Doe Radio Show. Thanks for hanging out with us. Can't thank you enough for hanging out with us daily here. What was I going to say about something? I have some possible giveaways coming for you guys here in the near future. Try and get Bike Holly involved on those. Also get Bike Holly involved in the show a little bit more. He's an extremely busy man selling his glass and his seeds. So if you need to get some seeds, you need something to add to your garden, you want something to add to your, you want a big glass piece, something like that, holler at Michael Hawley online, a.k.a. Michael Hawley, and he'll help take care of you. How you doing over there, Molly? She goes and lays right on top of the blanket, right on top of the area where I just chillax, sit and play video games, and then I'm sneezing later on, and I'm wondering why. It's because there's a Molly in my spot. All right. What the fuck am I talking about? That does it for today. Tomorrow on John Doe Radio, we might be talking to somebody from New Mexico about New Mexico. Basically, their system is just farked there, too, when it comes to distribution. And if you really don't live in the two big metropolitan areas, and we'll talk more about this, even if we don't get someone on the line from New Mexico, but something that's really unknown about New Mexico is that, number one, they are a medical marijuana state. Two, they have a decent system for people to be able to get permitted to use medical marijuana, but the access, the strains, super highly centralized. So a lot of patients having to drive to some crazy areas to be able to hook up with their cannabis. For instance, your provider will call you up and say, meet me at Walmart, meet me at McDonald's between 2 and 6, and send out a text to like 10 people. And then he's sitting there in McDonald's with however much weed he has. Very good situation to be able to get yourself jacked from. And then you have cannabis patients, medical marijuana patients, coming into these facilities, coming into these places like McDonald's and Walmart, and they're run the risk of being jacked too, because as you know, when it comes down to it, with cannabis, it's a cash-only situation. So, we'll talk about that more tomorrow, and New Mexico probably something that we'll concentrate on. I'll try and concentrate on a little bit harder here in the near future because it does get forgotten and left at the wayside quite a bit. If you're any somewhat familiar at all with Governor Gary Richardson, or Gary Richardson. Richardson was the one after Johnson. Governor Gary Johnson, who's been on the show before, he's also ran as a libertarian candidate for president, admitted freely to using cannabis while he was governor of New Mexico, still got injured in a hang gliding accident, and then, oh man, this helps my back so much. Something along those lines, used cannabis for his benefit and was freely open about it. One of the only politicians out there to admit to using cannabis, and not only admit to using cannabis, but while they're in office, and then the people of Mexico trying to put into legislation some sort of term limit extent to keep Gary Johnson in office. Such a fantastic businessman, such a fantastic leader that they were like, we don't want to get rid of you. But still, New Mexico has super crappy distribution system. Strains hard to move back and forth between growers and people there. It seems super underground, and it shouldn't really be. So we'll talk about that tomorrow, and then a few other things. Weed wars, cannabis groups fighting each other, and then whatever news comes up tomorrow during the day, which Tuesdays and Wednesdays seem like hugely fantastic news days for cannabis. Kind of big. All right. In the chat room, what are you guys talking about here before we leave? Hi. How you doing? Where are we at? Okay. Cannabinoids cover all those. When it comes to marijuana in the plant, federally, it's illegal. Everything part of the marijuana plant. Seeds, sticks, stems, steeds, whatever it is. It was awesome that they showed the guy. Oh, yeah. Hey, Dredd was in the chat room today, too. Fantastic. Howdy, Dredd. I miss you, homie. Really can't wait to see it. If you do happen to move back here to Colorado, might be hard to get rid of me from hanging out with you a bunch. You know, get sick of me. He's like, oh, hell no. That ain't going to happen. Anyway, I miss my homie. Dredd smokes weed. Good friend of ours here at John Doe Radio. Known him for years. Anyway, he says, reminded me again today, which was super cool. We talked about last week in passing, saying about this cancer patient whose last wish was that he wanted to see the new Star Wars movie. Got to see that brand new Star Wars movie, and then last night, I think it was, or whatever, he passed away. So, super sad, super bummer. And as I've said before right here, you just can't express how shitty cancer is. Period, end of story. It's one of the most horrible things that can happen to you or to a loved one. It just chokes me up every time I hear about somebody that's suffering from cancer, because there's just not enough energy in me and not enough thought can go into it to fix you. Just wish that we could all come together, use our mind power, super Jedi mind tricks, and fix you. It destroys me. That and AIDS, two of the most harmful things, the scariest things that you could face here in the world. God, way to end the show on a down note, John Doe. Fucking crazy. So big shout out to Yellow Cake, who's always in chat with us. Monday through Friday, John Doe Radio, JohnDoeRad.io, or you can check us out, YouTube.com/John Doe Radio. Hopefully you guys are having a fantastic evening. Looks like it's going to snow here in Denver. It might get snowed in here in the foothills. We'll spend the day tomorrow hanging out if you get a chance. Join me on Facebook. Posts up there. The show, blah, 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 all this good stuff. I'm John Doe. Tim Martin. Tell me to get tomorrow. See you.
The John Doe Radio
radio show is produced by Charlie Stash Entertainment. The John Doe radio show programming is not limited to information
on counterculture subjects
and is intended as informational and entertainment purposes only. We specifically include responsible marijuana reform.
Listening to anyone but your mother is just plain stupid.
We accept no responsibility for your actions or misrepresentations, and we do not fully endorse the use of illegal drugs. You are ultimately responsible for yourself.
Live.
Can I get an amen? Hallelujah.